Hello, Smart Community friends. It's our podcast birthday today. The Smart Community podcast has turned 3 years old on the 23rd of February 2021. So to celebrate, we are doing a week of bonus episodes, bringing together multiple guest answers over multiple days to the question, where to next for smart cities and communities? In this episode, I'm sharing with you the answers from a range of our guests in this past year. Hyma Vulpala from episode 167, Zaheer Allam from episode 158, Belay from episode 199, and Teresa Harding from episode 193. The themes that come through in all of the guest answers are around accountability, change, and that constant tension between tech-centric and people-centric approaches. The changes in technology and in our world are not slowing down, and there is a danger that some people will get left behind if we're not proactive about making sure that doesn't happen. We also need to make sure that we're holding both our governments and our private corporations accountable for the decisions they are making and the data they are collecting. Several guests make important points about the need for more regulation and legislation to make sure we are democratizing technology and keeping the citizens' needs at the heart of decisions, not the corporations or not the technology. The expectations of the community are changing too, as more information about data and privacy and technology come to light. As Teresa says, there's an important link between open data and civic participation, and when citizens have more access to data, they are better able to participate. All the guests agree that there is more work to be done and more questions to be asked in the smart community space, and that we need to bring the people back to the heart of the conversation. I really enjoyed listening back to these short snippets from these episodes. Zaheer really points out that we need to ask the difficult questions, democratize technology. He also links in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, inclusivity, and opening the market for smaller players. Hyma talks about hyperconnectivity and the new skills that are required in our communities, particularly around privacy and data. Teresa reflects back to the 90s when she was in IT and some of the things we were thinking about back then when we were at the pinnacle of what technology could do for us. She also talks about holding governments to account and protecting democracy and our way of life. V adds that there is more work to be done, particularly in the international standard space, and making sure we stay people-centric. Okay, so the guests again, Hyma Vulpala from episode 167, Zaheer Allam from episode 158, Belay from episode 199, and Teresa Harding from episode 193. We'll be back in your podcatchers tomorrow with another bonus episode. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
So where to next for smart cities and communities?
I think it is actually the hyperconnectivity, and the 5G is going to revolutionize even further than what we are actually experiencing. And I don't think that it's very far for robots to actually take over many roles, so, and we're not talking about it. And I think it's drones are taking over many of the skills that, whereas normally, humans used to do it, but then in one way, it is actually great. And the other side of it is, yes, what are the new skills are required in managing them? What security things that we need to think about? What are the policies changes that we need to make as a government or the private? And, are we realizing? And what are the privacy that we need to, to be protecting for the individuals or any other things that I don't even think that we even realize.
Yeah, I think we don't even realize what we don't realize. We don't know what we don't know, and then we don't know that we need to know it.
That's right.
And I think it's, like you said, happening so rapidly and continuing to happen so rapidly, and we've got all these devices and managing them that I think as you and I in this space, we're in the space, we're talking about it, we're researching all the time, but the general population even getting further left behind, and at what point are we, particularly with privacy and I guess, what point are we going to realize that, you know, we've gone too far one way or the other, and going back in, you know, data and privacy and things, and what will that actually look like? And it'll be a new era of, I don't know, data, and which, you know, there's lots of data now, but that new era of data protection and ownership, I think, will be really fascinating to see how that all plays out or continues to play out in this space.
Yeah, it is. I think there will be quite a number of, the legal entities or the legal industry need to upgrade themselves, because the amount of things are happening in this technology, in this digital age, for example, whether the legal system is able to keep up with it, are they able to, embrace the technology and then move forward with it, so there are a lot of industries are like that who are actually realizing the benefits very slowly, whereas the amount of things are happening and the way it is going to happen even more in the future, we need to adapt to these changes sooner than the later.
So where to next for smart cities and communities?
I think we do have difficult questions to ask, and it is quite problematic because those are still controlled by ICT corporations. They are the service providers, and it is a threat to smaller emerging groups, because it is very hard to compete with those giants. They're monopolizing the market. I think we do need some regulations to democratize technology and knowledge. We do need to open those databases so that people, scientists can tap into those, can tap into opportunities, and can better analyze data for the sake of the urban communities or the global good. And we need increased regulations on copyright, on data. And also we need to perhaps review regulations, because we're moving completely to different speeds based data and technology and regulations.
Yeah, I think regulation is sometimes skipped over, seen as, boring or not necessary, but it's definitely necessary in a certain form, and we need people from both sides to be involved in that. But particularly the government needs to be setting those rules, because, like you said, these monopolies, and that's kind of the way, the seen thing to do, which is be a monopoly. That's how you make it in this market. But it can't be like that, because, well, I hope it can't be like that, because when we move into these smart communities, if it's only the big players that survive, then there's no room for the rest of us.
And the thing with those big players, they're usually foreign. So there will be like a foreign entity coming in, capitalizing on this local fabric. All the profits are going back to some foreign land. And it's like, what happens to the small businesses there? They don't gain anything from it. And then it's not very smart, and it's not inclusive. And something in this case, UN Habitat did not promote smart cities scheme. And it is only this year. I don't know if you'll be attending the WOOF 10 World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi next year. I think this will be the first time in February next year where UN Habitat will openly talk about smart cities, and where they will provide a dedicated dimension for discussion on smart cities. Because in line with the SDG 11, we need to devise not only sustainable, resilient, safe, but also inclusive communities. So for the smart city, I think the biggest challenge would be on inclusivity, because all the rest we can do through technology. But inclusivity, technology is not really doing that right now.
Yeah, it's the real human aspect of it. And I think that's even more important, because we don't want to move into this dystopian world where everything's running seamlessly and efficiently, but everyone's just miserable. And if you're not in the higher echelons, then that divide is so huge that you can't even move up. That social mobility just isn't available.
But I think in this case, large corporations, if they do agree to sit down with governments and with smaller stakeholders, there is a way to restructure this. Because instead of turning towards direct economic models where, they do a business and they gain a profit through the linear process like we've been doing for decades, if they do agree to break that, then I'm sure we can somehow redefine it and do a more innovative model where they also gain in the long run, but also while opening the market for smaller players. And this is possible.
Where to next for smart communities?
Look, I think we still have more work to do. And even, I think at the beginning of this year when we're starting to look at the program of work internationally, it's continually growing. So I think because of new technology and new issues, we're finding that we're playing like a catch-up game compared to other countries. And when I say that, for example, with the pandemic, we recently had multiple requests come through internationally to say, okay, we may need to start creating a standard for digital platforms for smart communities or smart cities. So we find that as we're sort of trying to grapple and understand the meaning of existing standards and how it can play a role, there's also new standards being, created by other countries. And so it's continually evolving, but I'm hoping that, as we get more and more people engaged, we'll be able to understand, I suppose, the implications for Australia and how can we sort of contribute to those standards that's being developed internationally. And in some cases, as I said, some of these international standards come through the lens of technology first. And so I want to make sure that in Australia, we also provide our input by putting the people first into that conversation. So I think for us, it's like making sure that we continue reinforcing that point that, we want it to be standards to be people-centric rather than standards for technology.
Love that. That's really great. And I think that's so important. And it's good to know that as Australians, that's what we've decided, that we are going to put the people first, that we are going to be that citizen-centric or, whatever other, I know there's lots of buzzwords around it, but essentially bringing the people back to the centre and the heart of it. And I think if we can do that properly, then these issues that we're talking about, privacy and security and data sharing and all those type of things, we can have real conversations about them because we'll actually keep bringing it back to what does that mean for the person?
Yes.
Not what does it mean for, the technology or the company profiting or whatever, but actually what does it mean for the individual? So, that's really important.
Yes. Now, I think that was one of the things that, we all agreed on. And when I spoke to our committees and even our Australian stakeholders broadly, everyone agreed that the view we have about a smart community, it's about for the people, it's about how do you ensure that they generate the most benefit from it rather than the technology. So, certainly it's something that we all agreed to that I was quite happy to see and quite happy to make sure that, we promote that view internationally as well.
So where to next for smart communities?
Well, I'm probably going to sound like an old fart to you, Zoe, but when I first started in the IT industry in the early 1990s, we thought that the pinnacle, I was obviously in my early 20s, we thought the pinnacle of technology would be to be able to order a pizza while sitting at your lounge. Sitting there, and obviously we reached that high aspiration a few years ago. But I think it just goes to show how much things have changed. One thing I'm absolutely adamant about is that we need to hold governments into account, and I think technology is a wonderful way of us holding governments into account. And I think that's something that I'd love to see expanded. I'd love to see what we've done here in Ipswich expand into other councils. They do it in other councils in the US and in the UK. So it would be really great to see that expand because I think that people deserve to know how their taxes are being spent and how decisions are being made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it'll be demanded from the community as well as expectations change. So I think, it's a really forward-thinking approach for Ipswich to start that. And I think it will catch on. Well, I hope it will catch on with other councils as well.
For me, Zoe, when I was 18, I joined the Army, and that was to serve my nation and protect our way of life. And I take that with me into this public role that I'm in now. What can I do to protect our democracy and our way of life? And a big part of our democracy is being accountable, and that we can change governments without bloodshed. And I think it's a really big part of Western democracy to have that information available. I think it absolutely underpins our functioning democracy.
Yeah, and I think if we think about it like that, and it's a very logical way to think about it, bring in that creativity. So when we are moving towards that, we can, I guess, come up with new ideas. And it is not the way, we're not going to get there by just doing it the way we've always done it, which I think is really key. And I think that's where we need such a diverse group of people involved. So one, in the decision making, but two, in the engagement side of things as well.
Oh, I agree. I think there's that important link between, the open data and civic participation. And I think when citizens have more access to data on the business of government or access to data to improve things, they'll be better equipped to do that, and also they'll be better able to participate in that as well.
The Smart Community podcast is brought to you by My Smart Community. If you're trying to deal with disruption, not sure what technologies to buy, need to facilitate genuine collaboration, then we can help. Email hello@mysmart.community or head to www.mysmart.community/consulting.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.